For years and years, I was using the 5D series for all of our photography work, and now we've been using the R5 ever since it came out. So I'm gonna give you my complete photography workflow, all of the settings and techniques that I use to get our jobs done. We're in an amazing location today. This is God's own junkyard in London. Tons of neon, really cool lighting. It's great for testing any camera out. And a huge thank you to the sponsor of this video, Masterworks. The R5 might not be Canon's flagship camera, but it probably is the most widely used professional camera body because it's got all of the image quality you could ever need, and it's a little bit more accessible. Let's start with the physical setup of the camera, especially the lenses that I use. So you'll notice this is EF glass. Since I've been using the 5D for so long, we already had all of the EF lenses you could want. And so if you're looking to get into the R series and you're thinking about what you might want to get, the reasons I go for EF is, well, a big one is that our video camera is the C70 that we're shooting on right now. And on that, I use an adapter that lets me use it as a full frame camera as long as it's EF lenses. Those EF lenses are also really affordable because you can find them used all over the place. They're getting a bit older now. There's also great third-party options, including Sigma. I use a lot of those. But the trade-off, the downside, is the RF lenses are actually a bit sharper. So this is the 24-70 2.8 version 2, and we've been using this forever and just keep using it because it keeps working. If you do a direct side-by-side, it's not quite as sharp, but the autofocus works just as well even with an adapter. Speaking of adapters, lately I've been using the Meek drop-in filter mount adapter. Now this does a few great things. Right now, it just has a clear filter in it because, well, we don't need anything for the photos in here, it's already pretty dark. But when we're outside or shooting in brighter environments, it has a variable ND filter that you can just swap in and out. So then when we switch over to video, we can change the exposure just by moving the dial on it. It's extremely easy and fixes one of the problems that bothers me shooting video on a mirrorless like this is no built-in NDs, and I really don't like screwing them onto the front of it. Canon also has their own official VND adapter, but there's a huge advantage of this Meek one. It's way cheaper and the quality is just about as good. If you watch a lot of camera reviews on YouTube, you've probably noticed a lot of people have these little red dongles hanging off the sides of their camera, and this is for Peak Design straps. I have been using these ever since they came out and they are so incredibly useful. A lot of the reasons because I often don't even have a strap on it and it makes it easy to take on and off. One-handed, you can easily just clip them onto both sides and then your strap is on. But since I haven't used it that much lately, I'm actually thinking maybe the wrist strap would be more useful when we're just walking around so I don't drop the camera or somebody can't grab it out of my hand. On the bottom, you'll notice I don't have a battery grip. A lot of people do use it, but I just find that extra size and weight is not what I need, especially when we're traveling. I actually wish this was a little bit lighter, not heavier. But what I do have on the bottom of all my cameras is an Arca Swiss plate. Having the same tripod mount on everything means that all my tripods can also have the same mount and I can quickly pop it on and off, use the same thing for the video cameras and the photo cameras, and whatever we're shooting, it can use the same plate. Now let's talk about some of the settings that I use, starting with the file format. So something that I love on the R series is compressed RAW. Back in the 5D days, there was something great called small and medium RAW, where it was a lower resolution, so you could have small file sizes, but it's still effectively RAW. But there was a huge trade-off back then because it would really limit the dynamic range. Highlights would clip much sooner, so you weren't getting all the image quality. Now, with compressed RAW, the files are half the size, which is a huge difference, and almost all of the image quality is there. If you really zoom in, you can find some what looks like JPEG compression in the fine details, but for most uses, it's really not visible, and you still have all of the highlight and shadow recovery available later, as well as the flexibility in terms of white balance. Canon has also been adopting the HEIF format, H-E-I-F, and that basically allows you to have higher quality compressed files. So it's kind of gradually replacing JPEG. They're 10-bit instead of 8-bit, but you're not gonna find a massive difference in terms of image quality. It's not like RAW, you can't change the white balance and stuff like that. It's just a little bit better in similar file size. To change from JPEG to HEIF, it's actually kind of weird. You go into Menu, and then into the second tab of the red camera, HDR PQ settings, and you turn them on. That is a very confusing name, but it does it. In terms of the storage, I really like Sony's tough memory cards. They are kind of a unibody design, so that's physically more resilient to any kind of damage or wear and tear. And then for the CF Express, I use the Lexar cards. Now, the way that I usually do this is that the SD card is saving the raw primary files, and then I'm saving a backup to the CF Express card. And when we're traveling, like right now, and we're gonna be shooting tons of photos, the backup files will be saved as a compressed either JPEG or HEIF file. And then I have tons of room. So one memory card could last through the whole trip. And then the SD cards are what I'm offloading every day. To set the backup recording, go into Menu, Recording Function, and Card Folder Selection. Go to the photo area, because you can set it differently for photos and videos. And then I'm gonna record separately. Then you can use the Q menu to set what each card is saving. So on card number 1, I'm gonna save those as, I don't know, let's say medium JPEGs. And then to card number 2, the SD card, I'm gonna save compressed RAW. Another setting you're gonna wanna change on any camera, this isn't just a Canon thing, is enter the copyright information. So when people look at your photos on the internet, they know it's yours. It's pretty easy to do. It's in the yellow menu under number 6, and then you enter copyright info, just type in your name, and it'll be saved to every file. You guys know why I make these videos, right? It's to help you improve. And this applies to the software that you use and the gear that you buy and, you know, everything that helps you create better images. So I'm pretty particular about anything that I recommend because it doesn't just affect me, it affects you guys too. That's why I'm picky about my software, my edits, my sponsors, and especially where I put my money. So I'm especially excited about this new opportunity. This is a chance to break into a market worth $1.7 trillion that up until now has been a billionaire's playground. But with changing analytics, a team of experts, and an idea that's never been pulled off before, there is no way that these guys weren't going to make something amazing. I'm talking about Masterworks, the first platform letting people like you and I access what the Wall Street Journal called the hottest market on earth, the art market. This isn't digital art or even NFTs. This is real physical art, the art that you see in museums that goes for millions at auction. But the museums and the auction houses are just a snapshot of the bigger picture. The truth is, the art market has been used by the world's richest as a store of wealth and a diversification instrument for generations. And now Masterworks lets you tap into some of those benefits, but for a fraction of what the billionaires pay to purchase. That sounds simple, but that simple idea got them a $1 billion valuation. Masterworks offers only the best of these highly desirable paintings from artists like Picasso or Andy Warhol and even Banksy. And it's all at an amount customizable to you because you're not coughing up millions for a full Picasso. You're investing in a portion of it, along with the other members on the platform. And it's produced some impressive results. 3 of the paintings that they've offered have each returned over 30% net IRR to investors. Although legally, I have to add, past performance is no guarantee of future results, but still 30+% is pretty exceptional. Like I said, it's a great idea, so good that there's actually a waiting list to join. But you guys, viewers, can skip the waiting list by clicking the link in the description below to join 400,000 Masterworks members already. So go check it out, and thanks again to Masterworks for sponsoring this video. One thing I love about shooting Canon is it doesn't require a lot of customization, something that I feel like I need to do on Sony's. So I'd recommend don't tweak every single button to something different. Try to keep it as close to standard as you're comfortable with. When I'm using the R5 or pretty much any camera, I'm using one of 2 shooting modes. And that's either aperture priority, which is what I'm going to use in an uncontrolled lighting environment. So I can't necessarily keep up with the changes of darkness and brightness, and I just instead use the exposure compensation to make sure that it's getting the exposure in the place that I want. If we're shooting with controlled light or staying in the same lighting environment for a while, then I will be in manual mode and kind of just changing the shutter speed, leaving the aperture where it is. And the reason to shoot this way is that the depth of field is usually something that you want the most control over, like is the background in focus or not, and you want to be consistent throughout the photos that you're taking. So that's why I'm not changing the aperture too much in the same set of images. For the ISO, I usually just set it for the environment that we're in. If it's bright, then I keep it low, and if it's dark, then I raise it up. But the highest I try to go is about 1600 or maybe 3200. And this is because we shoot all this commercial work and I always want everything to print big. But you know what actually changes the most isn't necessarily the noise that's visible, it's that the color reproduction gets a little bit worse as your ISO goes up. And of course, you can shoot at higher ISOs than this, especially with night photography, but we're usually controlling our light, and instead of raising the ISO, I'll try to add more light to the scene. There's some shooting information that I like to keep visible on the back of my screen. That includes the 3x3 grid so that I can check if lines are straight and also have a sense of the rule of thirds while I'm composing an image. Electronic levels are amazing, and I also want to see it added to the C70. Also, a lot of the time I've got my histogram on and I'm keeping an eye on that for my exposure. You might have seen on Instagram that I've actually changed the way I'm gripping my camera lately. I used to do it this way with my right hand on top, and I think it's because it gives me a firmer grip with my stronger hand. Now I've been switching it to the opposite, to the right hand on the bottom. And this is after a conversation with my friend Simbrash, who was just on the podcast recently. And the big difference here is that it allows me to get my elbows tucked in. So I can look down at the viewfinder as if it's like an old school medium format camera. My elbows are in as opposed to out. So if other people are nearby, I'm not bumping them. And it's just a bit more of a compact way to shoot. One of the best things about when I got the R5 is that the autofocus is super reliable. It just gets it right most of the time without a lot of intervention, but there are a few settings I like to change. It's really weird that by default, this joystick does not control where the autofocus point is. Canon really needs to change this. So to fix it, you go into menu. In the orange section, you go to customize buttons, scroll to the very bottom. It's multi-controllers, and you just want to enable that for photos. And then when you're shooting, the joystick will move the focus point around as you'd expect. Now let's go into the Q menu, look at the focus options that I like to use the most. So a lot of the time I am using the full tracking because it does a great job of detecting faces, tracking eyes. It really is pretty reliable. But if I need to be a little bit more specific, I really like these zone AF areas, which are like pretty large areas. They're not super targeted, but it still has face detection within it. So as long as I put it near the subject's face, it's going to still find it in the end. The Canon R5 is just one of the best cameras that exist right now. So many professionals are using it because it's a good balance of size and amazing image quality. If you want to know more about mastering whatever camera it is you're using, I recommend subscribing to the podcast. Go to StalmanPodcast.com, or I'll see you in the next video.